I do want to take your dreams seriously. Whatever is in your heart was placed there for a reason, and I want to, every small win that you get towards that goal, thinking about that plan and making it into smaller chunks, every tiny small chunk, I want you to celebrate. Welcome to the Open Delta podcast, where we believe that you are here to be more, not do more. I am your host, Eileen, and as a coach, speaker, and consultant, I will help you manifest your dream life that can bring you more power, peace, and cash. If you're ready to dive into the mindset, neuroscience, and connection to the universe, vamos a darle. Welcome back to another episode of Open Delta. I am excited about today's topic. It has taken me a little while to figure out what I wanted to talk about when it comes to perfectionism, because this is something that I have struggled with for the last couple of years and worked through therapy to figure out some of the root causes and what can I improve. So I am going to share a little bit about my journey with perfectionism and hoping that it resonates with you and that some of the practical things that we talk about are something that you can get to implement. And as always, we are going to start with a moment of gratitude. And I feel that today I feel very grateful for my tribe of people that have been there and supported me as I've navigated the spaces. There's people in my life that have been incredibly supportive as I've navigated and worked through this perfectionism journey. So very grateful for those people that have been there for me. So I would like to start out asking you about what would you achieve if you weren't so focused on getting it, whatever it means, perfect in the first time. There is so much to learn, to grow, to lean in, to talk about when it comes to you achieving your goals and maybe perfectionism, trying to make it work the first time gets in the way. I think perfectionism, it's fear in heels. It's a very interesting way to create a facade for some sort of fear. And today, when we talk about perfectionism, I am defining it as the obsessive trait for striving for a flawless or having a very high set of expectations that often lead to a lot of self-criticism. And if you don't meet those very high standards, there is a very evident form of self-sabotage. I think perfectionism, it's one of those self-sabotage traits that we don't fully acknowledge every single time, but it's really having this illusion of control and wanting to have influence or control over something that you want to have a specific outcome. However, attempting to control the outcome by trying to make everything perfect doesn't leave room for magic, doesn't leave room for the universe to come and provide an opportunity, doesn't leave room for people to actually come in to the project, to the idea, to the brainstorming session and make something different out of the idea. However, it's going to have so much more richness and perspective and love and warmth into it. So some of the examples of how perfectionism has showed up in my life. The first one is procrastination, in terms of waiting for the moment to be perfect or waiting for the things that you think that need to align for them to happen. And for example, one of the things that come to mind whenever talking about procrastination has really been starting to plan for something. For example, the podcast, for like I mentioned previous episodes, I had this idea and I wanted the first episode to be live. However, I kept procrastinating, figuring out the outline, figuring out what was the approach that I wanted to have. I kept procrastinating, asking my cousins the question if they know about how to produce a podcast. And so there's many ways that procrastination shows up in our lives. However, waiting for the perfect moment, it's never going to be there because it's very hard to plan for a feeling. And the other way that it's related to that is really overworking or waiting for the moment for you to feel good enough. And I don't even know how many posts on Canva from 2020, from 2021 that I wanted to post about my journey through corporate, some of the nuggets of learnings that I've learned along the way. However, I felt that they were never good enough. They were never good enough to share. They were not complete. They were not part of, the bigger overall message that I wanted to share. And so they're still there. And I think now I have a better way to presenting some of that information. However, they were good enough then. However, because of that perfectionism mentality, I wasn't willing to be vulnerable and share those at that moment. Another thing that I think when good enough comes up or has come up has been in relationships. Before I was with Rocky, I didn't feel that I was good enough for a good relationship, a good, healthy relationship. And that is another way that it might come up, that you are whole and fully who you need to be right in this moment. And that good enough, it's really a protective mechanism. And we want to make sure to understand where it's coming from, but you are whole and you are full, good enough today. Another way that it has showed up for me has been by paralysis by analysis, and this is all related to the fear of failure. Paralysis by analysis was convincing myself that I needed to have more information to move forward, when in reality, all I needed was to have more courage to start. So it's not that you don't have enough information. You can access all that information from yourself, leveraging your network and honestly the internet, leveraging your resources that you have at your phone, your computer. However, I think it's a matter of having the courage to put yourself out there, the courage to put your ideas into sentences, the courage to speak about the things that you want to do out loud, even if no one's listening. However, I do think there's a lot of power with sharing those ideas with those around you. And the last one that I think it shows up is in being reluctant to delegate or collaborate with other people. And this again goes back to that illusion of control. Do you think your abuela likes your tortillas better than her tortillas? The answer is probably not, very likely not. Pero quiere que aprendas. Your grandma wants for you to learn the family recipe, how to make, I was thinking tortillas de harina a mano. So learning how to make tortillas, learning how to make the tortillas the way your abuela does it is the point. It's not really the tortillas. So one of the things that I think about with this tortillas analogy is that a lot of times my grandma cooks a lot of things just freehand, and so does Rocky's grandma. She was trying to teach me how to make Swedish pancakes, which is something that Rocky's family has always done during Christmas Day. That's what they have for breakfast, Swedish pancakes. And her teaching me how to make that recipe was so funny, because she's like, yeah, just a little bit of this, and then like you mix it up, and then you add a little bit of that, and then like, oh, so like you see the consistency, it's not right, so you need to add more of this. And I was like, woman, I am not understanding how you're leading with your heart and me trying to read your heart is very hard to follow. However, that is a powerful lesson that it's still going to be a delicious food, even though we're just eyeballing it. We just want to know, or we just want to have those right ingredients. So, perfectionism, some of the ways that it can show up: procrastination, never feeling good enough, feel a failure, or paralysis by analysis, and then reluctance to collaborate or delegate. I thought excellence and perfectionism were the same thing. And for the longest time, I had them confused. And I think having a distinction of perfectionism is an unhealthy fixation or not having any flaw. It is 100% rooted in fear. It's all those sentiments of not good enough, not worthy, fear of failure. It's all about fear. And excellence, it's really about striving for improvement, striving for growth, and that is a major difference. Perfectionism is really looking at the fear and the negative components that can come out of that. And then excellent is really rooted in growth and progress. And so I want to transition the conversation to how perfectionism can stop or hinder your progress. And it really is because it leads to inaction. It leads to slowing down our progress because you're never going to feel ready. And so my question to you is, do you want to do the thing or do you want to feel the thing? Because you will never be fully ready because you're chasing a feeling rather than if you start doing what you set out, you can be inspired by what you're building. And perfectionism can have a mental component to it in terms of, for me, it really increased my stress. I was very stressed during sometimes periods in my life just because I wanted it to be perfect and it wasn't perfect. So then, therefore, I was stressed because it wasn't the way I wanted it to be. It gave me anxiety because I was so focused on the future and how I wanted things to be because I was trying to control that narrative. And in some situations, I had a burnout in one of my projects. I was very, very burned out because of I could not have the perfect outcome that I wanted, and it was very hard for me at that point in time to say no. And so that really had a mental health toll because of that perfectionism mentality. Um, from my experience on working or experiencing perfectionism and having that to being one of my main sources of self-sabotage, it was really because I was struggling with my self-worth. I was struggling with my self-concept, and I was trying to tie external achievements, feedback from other people. I was trying to use those results as a validation of who I was and what I was providing value to the team or bringing to the table. Perfectionism, it's really chasing a set of impossible standards, and it really leads to a cycle of disappointing and self-criticism because when you have these very high standards and you are consistently never meeting them, you're just digging a bigger hole in terms of your self-concept and your worthiness equation on what you can and can't do. However, that is not an accurate representation of who you really are. It's just that your expectations are not being met. However, the root of where those expectations are coming from are very unrealistic. And sometimes I do want to give grace to that version of me, because a lot of the times those expectations are coming from society, coming up with how we were raised, and not truly rooted on what we want for ourselves. And so some of the things that have helped me shifting from perfectionism to progress is thinking about things as done, not perfect. Progress, no matter how small, it's more valuable than waiting for something to be perfect. And earlier this year, I was in a strategy project. And if you are familiar with strategy projects, they're usually very short in terms of period. They're very concise and it's very fast. One of the things that I was struggling with is because we needed to interview the stakeholders. We were interviewing a group set of people, analyzing the situation, and then providing recommendations. However, how we were delivering, or from the time that we interviewed the stakeholders to the recommendation period, it was a very short period of time. And so I didn't have enough time to do the deliverables the way I wanted them to my quote unquote standards. However, we were getting them out, and the deliverables had all the information that they needed. They had all the data points that they needed. They had all the context that they needed to see, to understand the recommendation. However, it wasn't up to my aesthetics, the way I like to give out a deliverable. However, the deliverable was done. Like, it wasn't perfect. It was done, and they had all the information they needed in order to make a decision or an opinion of their own. So done, not perfect, is progress. What is the, startups, they always start with an MVP, the minimal viable product. What is it that is an MVP of whatever personal project, work project, relationship? Like, what are the things that you need to have in order for it to be done or complete? It doesn't have to be perfect. One of the best examples that I love hearing about is Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx. She is one of my business woman entrepreneur idols, and she credits a lot of her success to how her father encouraged her and her siblings to embrace failure. Very early on, she has shared across her platform that each week he would ask her, "What did you fail at this week?" And this really helped Sarah think about failure as a sign of trying and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, rather than something negative. As to myself, I learned failure to be something negative. She relates and talks about how rejections when she was starting Spanx, and how she was annotating those as, this is how I failed this week, and really learn about what wasn't working. And this led through some of her biggest breakthroughs. And I think it's IBM too who have this concept of failing forward and having a rate of failure that it's important to them. I know that Stephen Bartlett and other entrepreneurs are incorporating a chief of failure, and essentially is having someone responsible for setting up a series of oh my god, if those who are looking at the video, there's like a dot in my face because I put a disco ball behind me and it was just in my face. That is so cool. I was talking about the chief of failure, about setting up experiments and figuring out, this is the experiment, sort of what we talked in episode 2 or 3. It was about setting up the experiment and then figuring out what what worked and we can continue doing, and what doesn't work, and setting up the different experiment to get a different outcome. And so however you're setting up your experiments, knowing that there's people out there talking about how they feel this week to get better is one of the reasons that they credit their success. And so, first one, done, not perfect. And then two, using imperfection as a growth tool. The third one that I want to talk to you about is about focusing on action and learning. This is really about what is the next step forward that is going to bring you learning, it's going to bring you growth, it's going to bring you confidence. A lot of people that I talk to, they want clarity. Some of the people that come to me, they just want to be more clear on their goals. They want to be more clear on how they should go about it. And I think at the end of the day, they don't want clarity on the strategy. They want clarity of knowing that what they're doing like truly lights them up inside. And you won't get that unless you do something. For example, it doesn't do me any good talking that I want to have a podcast for the last 4 years unless I actually come here, speak to the microphone, and then after getting off the podcast, like I am so freaking energized every single time I step into this. So I know that what I'm doing is actually having that creative energy. We'll see what feedback I get from it every episode. However, like me stepping into this environment and speaking to y'all, like I know that at the end of the day, I'm creating this new energy, and that is one of my like life purposes, to create energy in this world. And so I wouldn't get that validation or confirmation for myself if I just speak about it. I need to do something about it, and from the doing is how you get the clarity. So I want you to leave this episode with some actionable tools that you can do in order to go from perfectionism to progress and really feeling that whatever you're doing feels in alignment with yourself. However, I know that there's already a lot of things out there in the internet for you. For example, if you want to start something, one of the things that we know is to break very large or complex projects, plans, whatever dreams you have in your heart, to break them into smaller chunks. That way they don't feel as overwhelming. I think there's plenty of videos and content out there on how to do that. I can also tell you about redefining success. What is it that it's going to make you check a box of say, yes, I did that. Did you learn something today? That's success. Did you read 10 pages from a book today? Yes or no? That is going to have a checkbox of things to really figure out what and how you're defining success. Another technique that I can give you is like the Pomodoro timer, putting 25 minutes on the timer and rest for 5 minutes and do this back and forth in order for you to allow yourself to get into a flow state and execute the tasks that need to be done. I think there are an infinity of things that you can do. However, it's only going to work whenever you try it. The biggest thing that I can offer you, and this has helped me like tremendously, is thinking about whatever it is that you are struggling with in terms of perfectionism, is to think about it as a recipe. And going back to my grandma and Rocky's grandma, is what is it that you're trying to do? You need to add your why. We have talked about the purpose and adding your why into the recipe. What is it, the actual project, whether it's a business plan, where is the approach on how you want to start one of your personal projects, add your plan into your recipe, add your accountability partner. Is this something that you're going to be doing on your own? Maybe you tell your best friend, maybe you tell your spouse about it so they can keep you accountable. Maybe you hire a coach. I think coaching is an amazing tool in order to help you keep accountable towards your goals, because at the end of the day, their agenda is your agenda. Whatever you're trying to do, they're going to help you get there. However, adding a pisco of whatever you fear, it's as part of the recipe. It's so simple. However, it has helped my brain work with my perfectionism so much more, because one of the things whenever I wanted to like start sharing more content, sharing my ideas online, was a lot of the like fear of judgment, of qué va a decir la gente, quién te crees, all of these limiting beliefs and negative thoughts. And it was like the fear of not feeling perfect or having the perfect piece of content. However, knowing that I know that not everyone's going to like the content, knowing that people are going to have different opinions, knowing that they might not agree with everything that I said, gave me so much peace, gave me so much liberation, knowing that part of my recipe was that I needed to fail, that I needed to fail as part of like my growth experiment. And thinking about the things that you want to do in terms of a recipe has given me so much liberation and freedom. And so I want you to remember that you need to give yourself grace, and you need to be loving and warm with yourself, to like not take yourself so seriously. You are just a human experiencing beautiful things in this lifetime. However, I do want to take your dreams seriously. Whatever is in your heart was placed there for a reason, and I want to, every small win that you get towards that goal, thinking about that plan and making it into smaller chunks, every tiny small chunk, I want you to celebrate. Including, for example, today I'm recording this episode and I'm going to treat myself to a coffee. That is going to be my way of celebrating every small win, because we are so good at celebrating the big milestones, the graduation, the wedding. However, how wonderful is that maybe you got a B on a class and it was a very tough class. Like the fact that you finished the class is a win. The fact that, you went on a first date and you had an amazing conversation. You might not have the big wedding right now. However, when we talk about relationships, like having that one conversation can be super, super powerful. And I don't know if you feel that I'm just getting fired up, because I love podcasting, and I am so excited for this journey. And really, I want for you to say thank you to perfectionism, because it will probably teach you a lot of lessons. However, thanking it for what it has offered you and protected you up until this point, we want to be able to close that loop that you've been stuck on, because you've been feeling that you're never good enough, that you're not worthy. However, the real magic happens when we embrace our imperfections and we trust ourselves that we're enough, and we come back to our bodies, come back to your soul to remember who you are. And for today's quote, I want to read you. It's by Paulo Coelho, and he writes, "I must enjoy all the gifts that God gives me today. Today. These gifts cannot be saved up. There is no bank in which we can place the gifts we receive from God in order to use them when we wish." I think when we're waiting to feel good enough, feel worthy enough, we're saving them. I used to have a notebook that it was about creating your dream life or something, and I was like, I'm not ready right now. I'm gonna wait till January 1st so I can start working on this. Till this day, that journal has not been opened, and I need to find it because on the move I don't know where it is. However, Paolo says there is no bankage we can place these gifts we receive from God in order to use them when we wish. If I do not make use of these blessings, I will lose them forever. Oof. God knows that we are all artists of life. One day He gives us a chisel to make a sculpture, the next, the brushes and a canvas. Another day He gives us a pen to write with. But we cannot use the chisel to paint a canvas or a pen to make a sculpture. Each day has its own miracle. I must accept today's blessing in order to create what I have. If I do this with detachment and without guilt, tomorrow I will receive more. And with that, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please remember to subscribe and leave me a review. And I am so excited for you to go out there and use your gifts and share them with the world. See you in the next one.